Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing this is the Tszyu versus Harrison breakdown video, as these two are going to collide on March 11th in the main event of a Showtime card that will be coming from Australia. It'll be for the vacant WBO interim super welterweight title, as they try to lock down a fight with Jermell Charlo, the undisputed champ. Now, before we get into that, guys, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate any support I can get. I'm just trying to boost my channel, get it out there more, and I really do want, want to promote it. So any kind of love is appreciated. But hey, if you guys don't like what I'm doing, thumbs down, or do a negative comment. I want you to be real with me. I don't want anybody being fake. All that being said, let's get into this fight. So this is a pretty big fight for both these men. You got Tszyu, the undefeated contender, was supposed to fight Jermell Charlo in January, but Charlo broke his hand or some kind of shit, and he's going to be out a decent amount of time, to where Tszyu had to shift, and he decided to take on a former champion in Tony Harrison, who's coming off of a big win. So both these guys are fired up. It's a crossroads fight, and I really do think this fight can go either way. I think it's very evenly matched, and I'm really excited about seeing it, because the winner, if it's Tszyu, you got an undefeated top contender lined up for Jermell Charlo, and then if it's Tony Harrison, you got a potential third fight with Charlo, a rubber match. And why not do that if you're what's his name, Charlo? I mean, if it makes dollars, it makes sense. A third fight would be entertaining. So I think it's worth those two guys locking it up, but we'll see. Now, as we do with all the breakdown videos, we go over the fight as I just did. We talk about each fighter. Usually in a championship fight, it's the champion and then the challenger. But in this scenario, since there's no champion, we are going to go with the favorite and the underdog. So we are going to start with Tszyu and then do Tony Harrison. And then I ask the same 5 questions of both fighters. And then I ask if it's better for boxing if one or the other wins. And then the final question, or the final thing, is my prediction on the fight. So let's get it rolling. We start with Tszyu, the undefeated top contender from Australia. So Tszyu is coming off of his last 3 fights date back to 2021. He had I believe it was a 3rd round knockout over a guy named Steve Spark. And then he followed that up with a, God, who did he beat after that? Jeez, I am drawing a clear blank right now on who he defeated after that. But then he defeated Terrell Gausha in his last fight, as he was risking the mandatory status in his last fight. That was April of last year. And, solid performance. He got put down early in the fight, but he just kind of grinded out on Gausha and got a clean unanimous decision. So I know his fight prior to that, I'm drawing a blank on the opponent, but I know that fight he had defeated he got a decision win. I just can't remember off the top of my head who it was. But, Tszyu is undefeated. He's a grinder. He's hungry. He was looking forward to the Charlo fight. So now that he's taking on another top 10 guy, he's got to still be hungry, and I think he is, or he wouldn't have taken this fight. So, so he's pretty confident rolling in as he's trying to become the interim champ. Now, what kind of fight does he need to have to win against Tony Harrison? And the thing is he's got to cut the angles off. He's got to go back and look at the Sergio Garcia fight and see where Sergio Garcia made his mistakes, because Tszyu's a grinder that comes forward and tries to just pretty much pummel you. And Tony Harrison can move and he can box, and he's taller and got the reach advantage. So he needs to negate that by cutting the ring off and digging to the body early and getting Tony Harrison in the late rounds. Because the one thing that he might be able to do is stop Tony Harrison late or really put pressure on him in the second half of the fight and close the distance if he's losing, because Tony Harrison, his MO has been to fade in the late rounds. Any loss that he has on his resume is because of that. And he hasn't fought very much the last few years. You know, this is his last 3 fights date all the way back to 2019 in the rematch with Charlo. So he hasn't put in a lot of rounds in the last 3 years, you know, and testing his stamina, I think, would be big for Tszyu, and I think that's what he needs to do. He needs to get in there, work the body, grind this one out, and hopefully he can get him out of there late or get a decision. Now, can Tszyu win by knockout? I think he can. I think Tony Harrison's a tough dude to hit and hurt early in a fight, but he can be worn down. Again, we've seen that. So I think Tszyu can wear him down and stop him later on in the fight. Can he win a decision? It's going to be tougher because Tony Harrison's not an easy out. He can box. He can accumulate points. He's done that before. But I think if he, you know, fights and he can put pressure on and stuff, that he might be able to pull off a decision win. I can see him winning a decision. What does a win mean for Tony Harrison? I mean, for Tszyu, a win is huge. It really is. I mean, a win puts him at the top of, you know, puts him right there at the top against Charlo. I mean, he's already there, but it really confirms him as a serious contender, especially if he wins impressively, without a doubt. So we're gonna see. I think a win though would be big. What does a loss mean for Tszyu? Depending on how he loses, one, it's going to be devastating either way because he's right there knocking on the door to fight for the undisputed title. A loss really would devastate him right now. But the kind of loss would determine how bad that devastation is. And if he goes out there and gets outboxed and outclassed, they're going to look at him as a guy just from Australia that really can't compete with the American fighters. But if he goes in there and he loses a close decision, something of that nature, then I think, you know, people might still argue that he's a contender, but he's just not on Charlo's level. So we gotta wait and see how that shakes down if he were to lose the fight. But that's my belief. Now we're gonna switch over to the former world champion Tony Harrison. Excuse me 1 second. Tony Harrison enters this fight coming off of a funny last 3 fights. He's 1-1-1 in his last 3 fights. But they date back to 2019, December of 2019, when he got stopped in the rematch against Charlo in a very competitive fight. Charlo beat him in the late rounds to extract his revenge, and, you know, Harrison got knocked out, but he fought hard. He returned in, I believe it was 2021, against Bryant Perella, little known, and he fought to a draw against him. A lot of personal issues, though. A lot of stuff was going on for him. So, you know, wasn't his best night. But then he returns over a year later against Sergio Garcia last year in a fight that most people thought he was going to lose, myself included. And he absolutely dominated Sergio Garcia over 10 rounds. He looked better than even Sebastian Fundora had against Garcia just 5 months earlier. Really dominated him, got a one-sided unanimous decision, and threw himself in the serious mix at, back into the serious mix at 154. So Tony Harrison riding into this fight is confident as hell. He's the only guy that has beaten Charlo. So he is confident, he talks shit, he's coming into this fight ready. He's also got the physical advantages, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So he's really confident and ready. Now, what kind of fight, what does Tony Harrison need to do to win this fight? And I think Tony Harrison needs to box and really do his thing, come in great shape. He really needs to work on his stamina, great shape, but use the height and reach advantage. He has a significant height and reach advantage. I think he's 3.5 inches taller than Tszyu, might be 4.5 inches. And then he also has a pretty distinct reach advantage. I want to say it's 4 inches. So he really can get in here and do his thing. And I can see him winning a clean, a decision if he were to do that. I really could see him doing his thing. Now, is he on enemy territory in Australia? Yes, he is. But Tony Harrison's a veteran. He's 4 years older. He's 32, where Tszyu's 28. But Tony Harrison has been there and done that. He knows what it takes. And he's confident right now. So he's got a lot working for him. So, can Tony Harrison win by knockout? Tony Harrison does have some pop. He can hurt people. And Gausha hurt Tszyu, even momentarily. And if Tony Harrison can use the ring and box where Gausha didn't, he might be able to wear down Tszyu and hurt him. But, we'll see. Do I think he can win by knockout? It's possible, in my opinion. Now, do I think Tony Harrison can win a decision here? And the answer is very clearly yes. I think if anybody gets a clear one-sided decision, it could be Tony Harrison. Because Tony Harrison's going in against a guy that likes to come forward and a guy that he's also taller than and has a reach advantage on. He could definitely box circles around Tszyu potentially, and depending on what Tszyu does, and win a clean decision here. So yeah, I can see him doing that. Now, what does a win mean for Tony Harrison? It means the world. It puts Tony Harrison right there, back in the mix, and he potentially could get a third fight with Charlo. And I look at Charlo, if he doesn't have a bigger name option, why not fight Tony Harrison for a third time before the end of the year? Give him that opportunity and, seal the deal. It's a trilogy fight. People would tune in. Both guys talk a lot of shit. The first 2 fights are entertaining as hell. They talked a lot of trash to each other. So I think it's a good size fight, and why not? And so if Tony Harrison can pull off the win, it's huge for him. Now, what does a loss mean for Tony Harrison? It's gonna hurt him no matter what, as I always say. But depending on how he loses, that's gonna matter. Tony Harrison's 32. He goes out there and Tszyu whips his ass. That might be all she wrote. He might be looking at it like, hey, I got one last run maybe, but, this didn't work out. So, it really could hurt him in that aspect if he gets his ass whipped, he gets knocked out. But if Tony Harrison comes in and loses a close one, I think he's right there in that circle of contenders at 154. So, we just got to wait and see, but I definitely think he's a contender and he's serious, so we'll see. Now, what does, okay, so, is it better for boxing if Tszyu or if Tony Harrison wins this fight? Tough to say, very tough to say, because Tszyu is younger, and he's the son of a Hall of Famer, Tszyu. So that would be good for boxing to see an Australian fighter do that. But Tony Harrison is a brash American fighter, and it sets up a third fight with Charlo, potentially. I think you could go either way with this. Maybe it's a little bit better for boxing if Tszyu wins because he's younger. He's got the more exciting style, so people might want to see Charlo. We're on a worldwide level, might want to see Charlo and Tszyu a little bit more, because they would be confident that Charlo would be the favorite, the clear favorite going into a third fight. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's better for boxing. So I personally am going to say that it's probably a little bit better for boxing if Tszyu wins this one, but it's close. And finally, my prediction on this fight. I did not make this prediction until I really started sitting down thinking about this fight today. And I'll be straight with you, after seeing the difference in height and reach and the way he fought against Sergio Garcia, I'm picking Tony Harrison to pull off the upset in Australia and beat Tszyu. Tszyu last year against Terrell Gausha, another boxer counterpuncher, didn't look great. He looked average, in my opinion, against the guy that he should have beaten. And he did. And he outworked him. But he didn't do really anything to overwhelm Gaucher and stop him. It was just kind of a grinded out unanimous decision. He got hurt in the fight. He got caught. I personally feel Tony Harrison has the same, maybe more power than Terrell Gaucher. And I think it's going to be tough to beat Tony Harrison, unless he can wear Tony Harrison down and cut the ring off from Harrison. That's going to be interesting to see who wins that battle. Can Tony Harrison move enough without getting tired and use the angles and counterpunch, or can Tszyu cut the ring off and hurt Tony Harrison and wear him down? That's going to be interesting. The late rounds are going to be interesting here in this fight. But I'm going out on a limb, and I could be wrong because I do think Tszyu is a live underdog. But I'm picking Tony Harrison to pull out the victory here and walk away with a decision and punch his ticket for a third fight with Charlo. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be good. Saturday, March 11th, main event of Showtime. Tszyu versus Tony Harrison. This was the breakdown video as they will compete for the WBO interim super welterweight title at 154. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.